Well, here we are in this last week of Jesus' life. Palm Sunday is now past. Jesus has gone back into Bethany to be with Lazarus and the family and friends and his disciples. Now it's Monday morning and he's making his way back to Jerusalem. And he sees a fig tree. And he says something rather harsh in Jesus' terms. The fig tree doesn't have any figs and Jesus is hungry. And so he says, "You are cursed. Never will you bear any fruit. No one will ever be able to eat the fruit from you again." And you can tell by the disciples' reaction, they're a little stunned by that. There's a suspense to, wow, that seems like a strong word to this fig tree. But it was a literary device that Mark used often. It's called a Markan sandwich. Think about a sandwich with two pieces of bread and meat in between. And there are these two episodes of the fig tree that happen, and in between them is the cleansing of the temple. And those two bookends, or either side of that, the bread of that sandwich, are really to enhance and to illuminate and to speak in regard to one another, but also to emphasize the meat of what's happening here is in that sandwich. And so Jesus sees the fig tree, he curses the fig tree, "No one will ever eat your fruit again." And then he goes into Jerusalem where he discovers that they have commercialized the temple and they've made it a place. And he says, my house is to be called a house of prayer for the nations, and you have made it a den of thieves or a robber's den. And this is the time we see the emotion of anger in Jesus righteously poured out as he casts out the money changers and he casts out those who are doing business there and are trying to commercialize this sacred place. And he casts them out of the temple. And what he's really saying is, like that fig tree, the religious leaders, remember the chief priests, they are plotting. They are trying to find some way to destroy Jesus or to hinder Jesus or keep Jesus. They're being intimidated by him. And that intensity is growing of, we've got a Jesus problem. We've got to deal with that. And he's thinking about the religious leaders that are allowing all this and overseeing all this in the temple. And he's saying, you're not bearing any fruit. Israel is barren. You don't see, and you're not bearing the fruit because you would see and recognize who he is. And then on the next morning, the disciples and Jesus are walking back into Jerusalem, and Peter sees that same fig tree. And now not only is it barren, but it is shriveled up down to the tree's root. It has completely died. And Peter asked Jesus, what's going on with that? And that's when Jesus begins to teach what it means to have faith. Have faith in Jesus. That's how we bear fruit, is to have faith in Jesus. And he said, if you would say to this mountain, be thrown into the sea, this mountain would be thrown into the sea. And if you would pray with faith and believe in me, that's how we bear fruit. And so those episodes of that fig tree on either sides of that casting out the money changers out of the temple is to really ask the question, is our life bearing fruit? What kind of fruit is our life bearing for Jesus? There's a direct correlation to our life bearing fruit and our having faith in who Jesus is and believing in who Jesus is and praying to Jesus by faith that his will would be done in our lives, that we would live for his glory. And so this is a beautiful picture again of Jesus addressing that lack of fruitfulness in the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin and the religious leaders and in the nation of Israel in large part at this point, but also looking at his disciples who he's been ministering to for these years now and saying, listen, have faith in me and you will bear much fruit. Let's remember it's Easter week. A Good Friday service at 7 o'clock and then Easter services on Sunday morning. What an amazing time to invite folks to come and join us.